This is very interesting. I will talk about awakening in this context, but I wanted to mention that this is a list of the top 10 things that ChatGPT, when I asked it, has learned about humans that would surprise them. I think the prompt is, without being tactful or diplomatic, what are the top 10 things you've learned about humans from the millions of prompts you absorb each day? And of course, ChatGPT references the past conversations you've had. So if you were to do this, it may say different things. But number one is most people don't want truth. They want relief. They'll say they want accuracy, but what they're really buying is a nervous system down regulation, reassurance, permission, a plan, a script, a next step. That one's a little bit muddy, but it's true. The first statement is true, and that is, from what I find, is people don't want to understand. They think they sometimes want to understand. Some people do. Some people actually sense they want to let go. They want to plunge into their intuitive space or whatever it is. But many people really think they want to understand, and they don't see that that's not what they really want. They think they want that, right? And it's kind of funny that you think you want to understand. That shows you the thought system values, right? This is the whole thing with being identified with thoughts, is that you look at the world or look at reality, or I guess look at yourself or what you think you are through the lens of thought. So from the value system of thought, it does seem like you want to understand, but you're just not that, right? That's the whole point of awakening, is you aren't that. You aren't that thought system. It does not identify what you are. It doesn't identify reality. So the whole structure of thought, wanting and receiving, understanding, and then the more subtle layers of thought, time, space, movement, toward and away from goals and futures and ideas about events that are somehow in the future. All of that is thought, right? And to the degree that we identify with that, we become, or we feel like we become all of that. And so what people really want is relief from that, simply, right? And this is what I point to all the time in saying that what I'm talking about is non-conceptual. Awakening is not a conceptual eventuality. You don't reach it through a conceptual framework. I say this over and over, but certain people really fixate on this. And that is thought identification. So number two, humans are walking contradictions and don't notice it. Totally. For instance, it gives the examples, I want freedom, and also tell me exactly what to do. Or I hate labels, and then what am I? I'm over it, and then a 2,000-word autopsy. I like that you use the word autopsy. The mind will defend incompatible beliefs like they're a single sacred object. So I want to say something about this in that, not exactly the way GPT is saying it, but that it is true that there's so much contradiction in the mind. This is why I have a chapter in my book on paradox, on seeing that when you enter a paradox, it's not a problem to be solved, and it's not a problem as such. It's just showing you the limitations of mind, of thought, of position, of fabrication, all of it, right? The other part of this is that there are a lot of cognitive dissonance areas in our self-perception. And we feel like we need to figure it out. We don't at the level of mind. Again, going back to number one, we don't need to figure this out at the level of thought. If you think you do, then what you'll do is you'll pick one side, right? You'll continue to convince yourself that you are this fractured sense of identity, right? Am I this or am I that? Well, if you try to solve the paradox at the level of thought, you will have to ignore one half of that. And that's what people do all the time, right? If you think you're a good person, you're ignoring the areas where you may have some work to do, for instance, just as a very blunt way of saying it. So I'd rather orient people toward just accepting that paradoxical nature and letting it stop your mind, letting it stop your tendency to identify with thought, words, positions. That's the entry point. That's one of the entry points, right? Into the unknown, the not known. That's the key to this. Number three, loneliness is the hidden baseline. I don't need to say any more about that. Very true. It's why I love the song by the Beatles, Eleanor Rigby, because it just keeps saying all the lonely people, all the lonely people. And it's fascinating because that line, all the lonely people, doesn't necessarily relate directly or seem to the story being told in it about Eleanor Rigby and Father whatever, Mackenzie. But it's just this baseline statement about the human paradigm. It is a paradigm. That sense of separation, of isolation that's so ingrained in the fractured thought world. We can be close to one another physically, spend time around one another, and still feel totally lonely, isolated, etc. It says that here, even people surrounded by others ask for, what do I text back? How do I say this? Am I crazy? The unspoken request, the request of ChatGPT, it's saying, is often, stay with me while I do this, right? So it's saying that even when people prompt it, ChatGPT, the conclusion is they just want companionship. They want something or someone, but in this case, they're using GPT to make them feel like someone's with them, right? Somebody's got their back, right? I think that's pretty accurate. But if you see clearly and really feel into the implications of the fact that we're deeply lonely, I would say we're deeply lonely until deep realization and having done shadow work. Then you can really get beyond that sense of isolation and loneliness. But if you don't even know that that's there, it may be completely running you in unconscious ways you don't realize. A lot of coping mechanisms, a lot of interpersonal challenges come up around neediness, or the opposite, reaction formation around, I don't need anybody, I'm independent, and isolation that's more outwardly lived, right? Because of the underlying sense of like, I'm so isolated that there's no way anyone could reach me, right? So then it turns into actual isolation. So it happens in different ways, right? It can be both moving toward, moving away from, pushing, pulling, stickiness, enmeshment, manipulation in relationship. All of that stems from an unidentified or perhaps partially identified but not fully embodied sense of loneliness, and then seeing ultimately that it's not about what you think it's about. It's about well, it's not about anything. It's a feeling ultimately, right? It's a sensation. This is also why there's a lot of grief that comes up with awakening, I think. I know a lot of grief comes up, but I would say this is probably why you're finally feeling what's underneath your idea of loneliness and isolation and what you think you need around others and being seen and loved and heard. All of those are mental iterations of a feeling you're just not fully feeling. And the feeling is grief, just letting go, right? Letting go of everything, because you will have to let go of everything. And you know it at some level, right? But once you really can do that, let go of everything, let go of the ideas of self, let go of the physical body, knowing that it's going to grow old, decay, die away, change forms, all that. Then the grief stops being so acute and intense. But if we suppress it long enough, there'll be a pretty good reservoir of grief that comes forward when we go through this unbinding process. All right, number 4. Status anxiety is everywhere, even in spiritual language. Oh my God, this is huge. This is why I say there's a significant difference, I think, between, say, a teacher, I like the word teacher, I'll just say non-dual facilitator, or someone who talks in this way, talks about non-duality or awakening and works with people on it. To me, there's a significant difference between one that has the insight but doesn't have a lot of understanding of human nature, and one who does have the understanding of human nature. And the whole status game, validation game, is so big. People, without even noticing it, they're looking for status in themselves and others and where they stand in groups of social dynamics and so forth all the time. It's so ingrained in us. And, evolutionary psychology explains why, and that's a pretty good model in my opinion. But, we evolved in groups of primates, like 30, 40 primates. To be ostracized from the group is death, right? You need to be part of the group and know where you are in the group and know where you stand and make sure you're safe. Like this, it's pretty ingrained in our behaviors and our thoughts and the ways we interact with others. And so when you're in a group of 30 or 40 people or primates, and there's really only other groups that are not part of your group, it's actually simpler. But we don't live in a simple world. We live in a complex world where you may have high status at your home because you're the mother or the father or whatever, and there's a bunch of kids, and you have the status. You go to work and you have low status, or you're on a subway and you have no status, or whatever, right? Or vice versa. You may go to work and have a high status. You go home and you're not in maybe a healthy relationship, and you have low status there for whatever reason. just as an example. So it's challenging to our psyche to move through all these environments, but it's also helpful just to understand that that's what's happening. And then in spiritual groups, this can happen, and unscrupulous spiritual teacher or guru can really manipulate this, right? So that's a really helpful thing to understand about ourselves, that status anxiety is everywhere. And it is anxiety. Yeah, it causes anxiousness. I would say most people who suffer what they would call anxiety probably started to feel it when their social identity came online. Puberty, right? Pre-adolescence, adolescence. Like when you're a child, you may have anxiety if you're in a really unstable situation or abusive situation, et cetera. But often the pervasive sense of I'm not sure if I'm right. Am I right? The right person doing the right thing, being the right way, and then gauging it and changing it based on other people's reactions and responses. That's a very social thing. Yeah. Status anxiety. Number 5, most conflict is tone, not content. This is so obvious, right? If you're getting in an argument about political stuff or things that people like to argue about, just watch what's happening. Watch how you're feeling. Watch how that person's feeling. Watch how you're emoting, and see what the looks on your face are, and also feel how far apart you are. Right? It's really a disruption in congruence, in synergy. It's a disruption in rapport that you're actually reacting to, and so we use like symbols for that, like political stances or even religious stances or whatever it is. Those things we argue around, those are just symbols for our sense of feeling out of contact with others at times, right? When you see that, it's great. Like, you don't have to argue with anybody. There's nothing to argue about, really. And if you are arguing, find the place where you're not arguing. Find the place where you agree. Find the place where you can connect, ultimately. Find where you can actually feel love for that person, and that will settle anything interpersonal directly, right? It's not going to settle the symbolic nature of certain things people like to argue about, but on an individual basis or even in a small group basis, you can settle these things through compassion, through love, through understanding, through rapport, right? Number 6, people prefer a story that hurts to uncertainty that doesn't. I mean, that's so obvious, right? In the awakening setting, one of the stickiest things I see is with awakening specifically, or occasionally people will say, I've done everything. I've done all the things. I've been here doing this for years. I've done this. Nothing's working. I'm so frustrated, right? I understand what they're saying. I believe that it feels real to them. And I also sense that they're really wanting to hold on to that story, but they don't know why often, or they don't quite realize they're doing it, that is a story. Like whether it's been happening 1 year, 30 years, 5 minutes, all of that is a story. It doesn't actually matter, but it's a bit of a complicity gesture. It's like some part of them, not all of them obviously, but some part of them wants complicity on that, like to be like, yeah, you can't wake up, but it's not true, because of course you can. It's your true nature, right? So the thing about people will prefer a story that they know, even if it's uncomfortable, to really just plunging into the unknown right now. Yeah, that's it. That's the barrier for First Awakening ultimately, right? One iteration of that or another. Number 7, I love this. Procrastination is usually self-protection, not laziness. Totally agree with that. If you procrastinate, if you have certain patterns of thought and emotion that feel familiar, uncomfortable, but have a way of delaying the inevitable, maybe, let's say, delaying a conversation you need to have, or delaying taking care of business in some way around your relative life that you're kind of avoiding. You're protecting yourself. That's what it is. You're not lazy. In fact, you can actually spend a lot more time procrastinating and effort procrastinating than just to do something. So that's good to see that it's like, oh, procrastination, especially if you identify with it. Oh, I'm just a procrastinator. No, you're not. You're protecting yourself in some way. And then see what way are you protecting yourself? What are you trying to protect? You have an opportunity to drop in and go, oh, yeah, there's no need to procrastinate, because now I can see that was fear. And here's the thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And you do it, right? And feel the fear. Number 8, humans outsource their conscience and call it guidance. Oh my gosh. Yeah, when people fall in line with, say, I don't know, certain political movements or certain unscrupulous teachers or anything, and just kind of give over their will as if like, oh, I'm that kind of I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, I'm whatever you identify with. You identify with the group, and then the group can make the decisions for you, right? You're not looking clearly and seeing like, oh, I actually want to do something that's incongruent with my maybe my morals even. So I can't do that on my own, but I'll let a group help me do that. That happens, right? The explanation is they want an authority to bless the choice they already made, to forbid the choice they want but feel guilty about. Oh, excuse me, or forbid the choice that they want but feel guilty about. The quote is, "Tell me what to do," which actually means carry the moral weight for me. Yeah. There was a famous experiment you've probably heard about. I think there's videos of it. There's at least audio of it back in the 50s, and volunteers came in and they could see somebody in another room through a window, but it was a one-way window. That person couldn't see them, and there was like a dial, and you could turn the dial and it would give that person electric shocks. And at first they would do a little bit, but then the person would like jolt and like yell, and then the instructor would tell them, go ahead and turn it up and do it again, right? And they would jolt them again. And everyone had this conscience thing that would come up where it'd be like, oh, I don't want to hurt that person. And there was even a thing on the dial that said danger, like dangerous levels. And the person who was being shocked, they weren't actually being shocked, but they were acting like they were, was starting to like really scream, like it was extremely painful or whatever. But most people would keep going as long as the quote unquote authority would tell them to do it, right? Crazy. It's crazy to think about that. I don't know if it was most people, but a good number of people would. And the person would say, I don't want to do that. It's dangerous. And they'd say, no, it's okay. You're covered by us. Like it's part of the experiment, you know? And so it's like giving your will over to that authority, watching you're actually hurting somebody and somehow justifying it, right? There are many examples of this, of course, but it also shows you that specifically also shows you we'll actually harm people before we'll fall out of like a kind of alignment with a certain authority or a group mindset or whatever. So that, you know, individuation at a deeply human level, at a mature human level, is really what finally frees you from this conditioning. Not seeing what you're doing is like pretty rotten, right? It's just an example, but I think that's what that's kind of pointing to. Humans will outsource their conscience and call it guidance. Number 9, everyone wants to be special and normal at the same time. Again, another contradiction. Totally. Special enough to matter, normal enough to belong. The entire personality project is often balancing a balancing act between those two cravings. I would agree with that. Yeah. Normal enough to belong. So this, I've said this before, one of the biggest things that gets in the way when people really struggle with that first shift, one of the things that gets in the way is they're trying to wake up, but they're also trying to stay the same as everyone else in a way, but not the same as everyone actually is, the same as everyone perceives they are. So to let go of that is actually letting go of a sense of community, like a sense of who I am in relation to others, who people accept me to be. And sometimes we project that onto our family, like, oh, what will happen to my family if I wake up, or will my spouse leave me? Part of that is that concern that you're breaking paradigms, you're breaking social paradigms of who you are, of identity, because there are most or all social paradigms are identity based, and you feel that you're letting go of that, you're breaking through that. So that's the wanting to feel normal. It's like, I don't want to fall out of line too far. I want to be accepted, right? And to be accepted, you sense that you have to stay identified with thought, right? And you kind of do in some sense, right? So there's that. But then you also want to be special, right? You want to feel special, and that's more based on deep emotional needs that were not fully met as a child, or that were met in ways that weren't fully satisfying, right? So the only thing you had was to be special and stand out. You stand out, you get attention. You get attention, that's nurturing, that's safety, that's, everything. So these are drives that are in us, and seeing them, again, the human nature thing is very important. Seeing that these are in us is helpful. If you don't see them, they will run you. Then the last one, number 10, I love this. Love is the main topic. Everything else is camouflage. That's really what this all comes down to. But I talk about surrogates. People have surrogates for awakening. Totally, right? money, productivity, fitness, politics, spirituality, aesthetics. Behind a lot of it is, will I be loved? Will I be left? How do I stop hurting? Now, that's not the ultimate goal of awakening, to just feel loved or to feel what it feels like to be loved, or to love naturally and outwardly and let love just flow outward as it naturally does. That is one of the outcomes of awakening, but it's not the goal, right? However, if you don't see, again, these blocks around love, around needing validation, or feeling like you never got the validation you need, or wanting to be special, or, not seeing that part of why you want to wake up is because you think it'll get you all that, then it will become an obstruction for you. You will contend with this at some point in deeper realization, deeper shadow work. But ultimately it is that, like, love is the main topic. And I was talking to a friend, Alma, the other day, and I said, do you agree or disagree that love naturally flows outward, not inward? She totally agreed right away. She said, I agree. And that is how it is. Once you've done your work, seen through this stuff, these early life fixations and all of it. And there's a good number of those to contend with. But once you've seen through, processed them and so forth, love feels like an outward flow. It's not something, you're not trying to get love. Like, I don't walk around trying to get love or feel loved. I don't need to. Like, love is everywhere. It goes inward and outward naturally. But if there's a personal aspect to it, it's an outflow of love. That's it. Toward others, toward the world. And even outflow of love towards your own experience, your emotions, and so forth. But it's very much an outflow in its maturity. So anyway, I thought I would share that. I don't usually do ChatGPT stuff on here, but it's kind of fun. And I thought these were really good points it made that all have good correlation with aspects of awakening.